This is Monocle Fashion, the show on Monocle Radio bringing you global perspectives and nuanced conversations on the worlds of fashion and style. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Monocle's senior correspondent, sitting in for Natalie Theodosi. On today's program, New York Fashion Week concluded today. The Monocle Fashion team assembles to discuss.
New York Fashion Week is very much alive and worth paying attention to.
We take a closer look at New York's new guard of up-and-coming designers.
Part of making that exploration itself feel familiar is by digging back into the archive and evolving what I already began rather than starting from scratch.
And we join Monocle's team in Milan to hear from Nikolina Johnston, Chief Operating Officer for Uniqlo Scandinavia, who designed Sweden's uniforms for the Winter Olympics.
One of the developments for the Milano Cortina official collection is actually the use of a completely new material.
That's all ahead here on Monocle Fashion. Now, at the point of recording here in London, the sun will be rising on the final day of New York Fashion Week, where the autumn-winter collections have been presented. Joining me to compare notes here in the studio is Monocle Fashion's producer, Lily Austin, and down the line is Monocle's fashion director, Natalie Theodosi. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back.
You are back on Monocle Fashion, and we're very, very happy about this. But Natalie, okay, New York Fashion Week ends today. I mean, first of all, can you give us kind of your general impression? Because some people say that perhaps the city's Fashion Week is not as relevant as it used to be. But do you think that's changing again because of perhaps, a lot of upcoming new designers at the Fashion Week? So tell us your initial view.
It's definitely changed a lot, and you're right, Faye. People are saying that the schedule is dead. A lot of the European editors especially are allocating their budgets differently, and they're saying that the New York Fashion Week schedule is dead and it's not worth a trip. And I think it's definitely not what it used to be. There's less big budget brands, there's less big scale shows, so the runway feels different. But there's definitely a revival in the sense of creativity and talent and discovery. So I think that New York Fashion Week is very much alive and worth paying attention to.
And Lily, I was going to ask as well, we're talking about the young designers, but we also have very traditional brands that perhaps are having a little bit of a revival as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, the big name at New York Fashion Week was Ralph Lauren. His show kind of launched the week, and it was in the financial district and in this marble palazzo, and was probably kind of by far the biggest and most headline-grabbing show from that respect. And it's an interesting brand because there were a few years there where it has sort of lost its cachet and sales were dipping. But in recent years, it seems that sort of Gen Z have discovered the brand, and there's definitely been a revival. Sales are up. So it's definitely an interesting story for that brand and why it's resonating so much with people. I think there's definitely an argument that the kind of the American fantasy that it emits is a nice tonic to some of the more contentious associations we now have with the US. The kind of Western country, slightly preppy, apolitical, I think. It's the opposite of the MAGA hat, if you will. But I also think it's interesting that a show that is designed by an 86-year-old is the one that's had the most press attention, really, out of all the collections, kind of outside of the fashion world. I think it does suggest that New York is struggling in some ways. But as Natalie says, that I think, in a sense, it makes space for this fashion week to offer something different because it is a space where new designers have room to develop rather than it just being about big names.
Listen, and as a fan of Ralph Lauren, I have to say, I think the brand has momentum at the moment. And you're right about talking about a younger generation. As I said, I do shop there. Every time I go, it's packed and it feels organic in a way. I think even their advertising, nothing surprising, but, we love talking about diversity in fashion. But interestingly enough, the Ralph Lauren ads, they are kind of very diverse. They never actually have any type of controversies about that, like brands like Dolce & Gabbana. But maybe, Natalie, back to you. What's your thoughts on Ralph Lauren and maybe other interesting debuts in New York Fashion Week this time?
Yeah, I agree with you, Faye. You mentioned advertising, and as well as advertising, when you see what he's done in terms of building a lifestyle sector, opening restaurants and cafes, and this idea of world building, which feels quite modern, and it's what the young brands are trying to do. He's been doing it all the way through, so it does feel very contemporary, even though ironically it's designed and helmed by an 86-year-old man. So I think that's really interesting, and it's why he's had this momentum. And I'm also looking at some other slightly younger but still brands that have been around, like Tory Burch. She felt quite old school, not as cool for a few years, and all of a sudden it's such a fresh, cool brand that all the downtown girls want to wear. And next to that, there's also Kate by Kate Holston, which is a brand that feels like it's becoming part of the establishment. So you might not have as many Ralph Laurens and as many established houses that like you had in the past, but there is a few household American names that bring you to the city, but also room for the young designers, and that's a great balance. And I think that's something to be celebrated. Not every city has to be like Paris, where you've got these huge shows and this packed schedule every single day.
And New York as well offers, I think it has always offered something different, because when we think of New York Fashion Week and those sorts of brands, they are generally more kind of ready to wear, less evening, often less sort of fantasy and more easy to wear. So I think that makes sense. I have to say I love the Tory Burch's collection, and I'm kind of surprised to even be saying that, because along with Ralph Lauren, I think... A lot
of revivals, I love it.
Yeah, like, 10 years ago, I think these brands were considered a little bit passé, but now they've kind of, I think with new people, with a new generation discovering them, and the world building around these brands, when we hear the name, we kind of know what we associate with it. Really, really beautiful collection.
And now I have a question to both of you, because of course we're talking here about the shows, but then lots of fashion stories were happening around the same time. So we have the new Vogue cover, which is the first one by their new head of editorial content, Chloe Mal. And I just want to hear your opinion. If you don't mind, I'll tell you mine. We don't have actually the physical magazine, because it's actually not even out in the United States yet, but it's going to be 8 issues a year. It's a thicker paper. One thing that I have to say that I'm positively surprised, I love that she's starting with Rosalia, I am sometimes disappointed by the covers of Vogue US. I think they're a bit kind of, studio. There's no magic there, but I think just having Rosalia, I saw some of the pictures, they were very beautiful. I don't know, I'm a little bit optimistic actually, if that's the way to go. And I saw an interview she gave to the New York Times together with Anna Wintour. And, I can see that she does have appreciation for print. I know that we're also heading digital, but I think if you're a Vogue fan, you want kind of the physical product as well. So,
I think it's all been masterminded, right? When New York Fashion Week was starting, they teased their new issue and their new strategy. There was a New York Times interview, so it all came together and everyone was talking about it, and especially the dynamic between Anna Wintour and Chloe Mal in that interview. I don't know what you thought about that. But I also felt optimistic overall and had quite a nice impression. I wasn't blown away by the aesthetic of the cover and the fashion, but I think choosing Rosalia was a really nice message, and in a very subtle way, making a little bit of a political statement about where she stands as well.
I felt like the cover is very Anna Wintour. I felt like it's like, you designers always talk about respecting the codes of the house when they take over as creative director, and I sort of feel like Chloe Mal's doing the same thing. The soft lighting, the beauty of the pretty dress, that to me is like so Anna Wintour. So it's definitely, I think there is a message here that this is not going to be a complete departure. But at the same time, yes, choosing Rosalia, like one of the biggest names of last year and someone with so much promise. And there is like a nod to like the political leaning by choosing her. So I think it was actually quite a carefully orchestrated and maybe quite a smart move to kind of bring these two things together. I'm interested in this thick paper concept. I'm looking forward to the issue coming out and Faye, you having it
I love a thick paper.
in the office.
But interesting point, Lily, you said about the analogy saying, that the cover is actually still very Anna Wintour, which I think it's fair enough, because I think, Vogue, especially in the US, they still sell actually quite a lot of copies in print. I'm sure it has declined, throughout the years, but they're dealing with a massive market. And even the American Vogue, that traditionally is a little bit more kind of ready-to-wear vibes. It didn't have perhaps what Vogue Paris and Vogue Italia had, a little bit more an artistic feel to it. So they have to be careful. Thicker paper, but yeah, let's not go too left field on the cover.
But I think they have to take risks and provoke a little bit more as well. America is a much more commercial market. As Lily said, she cannot veer completely away from Anna Wintour's aesthetic. I mean, she's still down the hall. She still has an office in the building. But I do hope to see even aesthetically some bigger departure as the issues evolve, because I'm thinking of even Chomanadi's first cover. I remember FKA Twigs on a London cab in quite a out there Loewe dress. I mean, we all remember probably Edward Enninful's first cover, and I don't think aesthetically it was pretty. The dress was safe. There was nice lighting. It's a pretty picture, but it didn't stop me.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Is will this be enough to sort of save Vogue? Because I mean, the very fact that it's gone down to 8 issues a year says something about where the magazine is at.
Give us thick paper. Thank you so much, Natalie. But I'll stick with you, Lily, for a moment, because we've covered the bigger fashion houses and the latest from Vogue. But what about the new designers? Lily, tell me a bit more, because you've looked a little closer to some of those up-and-coming brands on the Fashion Week calendar. I'm curious to hear it.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's an interesting time in New York because there are a number of emerging brands who are not just focused on design, but also on building houses that are going to last. So I spoke to a couple to hear more.
Let's take a listen.
This season, New York has had a challenge on its hands. Fashion Week fell midway through the Milan Cortina Olympics, over Valentine's weekend when the hotly anticipated Wuthering Heights adaptation was hitting cinemas, and during a particularly grey and sludgy February. Even heritage brands like Ralph Lauren and Marc Jacobs were going to struggle to get column inches. And all this comes at a time when questions are being asked about the relevance of bi-seasonal collections and Fashion Week presentations more broadly. Here at Monocle Fashion, we've spoken to many designers who are moving away from that kind of program. And yet, out of these uncertain times, a new guard of New York designers is emerging, one defined as much by clarity of purpose as by craft. The most anticipated debut was Rachel Scott, showcasing her first full collection as Proenza Schouler's new creative director. The reviews were strong, but what's notable is that more has been said about her own label's presentation a few days later. At Diotima, the Jamaican designer took a decidedly political stance. While other collections were noticeably apolitical, Scott partnered with the family and estate of the late Cuban artist Wilfredo Lam to create pieces inspired by his work. Lam is an artist best known for seeking to decolonize art through works that explored and celebrated Black diasporic culture. Scott also worked with the Refugee Atelier in New York to create carnival-inspired woven pieces in the collection.
It was always really important for me to link Jamaica or to have Jamaica be the foundation in some way.
The cohesiveness of that collection, combined with Scott's entry into the establishment via her new role at Proenza, marks a new chapter in a rising career, one foot firmly inside the institution, the other pushing at its edges. A position echoed by one of Diotima's front-row guests, New York's new First Lady, Rama Dewardji. Another designer reaching a new level of notoriety is Keith Herron, the designer behind Advisory. Herron launched his brand at just 13 years old, first with t-shirts before expanding into streetwear. In the years since, Advisory has matured into a full ready-to-wear brand, and in 2023 was recognized by the CFDA. This week's Autumn-Winter 26 collection, Return of the Space Cowboy, showcases a sharpened point of view, as Heron builds on codes that are now well-honed and distinctive.
I heard this quote from Daniel Roseberry, who's the American couturier at Schiaparelli, and it's one that stuck with me so much. It's recognition comes from repetition. And in 2023, I felt like I hadn't necessarily fully established my brand's codes or motifs. Therefore, it wasn't exactly recognizable. It was creative, but it wasn't exactly recognizable at the moment. So I stripped everything down to its essentials and kind of defined what Advisory is. And I feel after my last collection, a lot of the feedback that I had gained was, this was the first time I saw your brand and recognized it as this being Advisory. So I felt that I have this responsibility to, of course, continue building on what exists and to not stray far away from that. However, because it's now recognizable, I have a little bit more leeway to bring it into these different spaces that I've always wanted to explore. And part of making that exploration itself feel familiar is by digging back into the archive and evolving what I already began rather than starting from scratch.
What's notable about many of the up-and-coming designers marking out spots on the Fashion Week calendar is their business sense. Like Heron, Kate Barton, the 30-year-old designer behind her eponymous line, is conscious of the importance of establishing a brand identity.
Creating these kind of signatures and DNA for the brand was something that was really important to me early on. And so I'm lucky that I kind of thought about that early on, because it really is translated through like day one till now. This draping technique that I created is still kind of the core DNA of the brand, and it is something that's become very recognizable.
But Barton isn't just thinking about design. She's thinking about her line as a brand in the fullest sense of the word.
The fashion landscape is changing so much right now, and I think while that is a challenging time for especially emerging brands, it's also a very unique position where we really have this opportunity to figure out where are consumers actually finding their loyalty and building community and shopping today. And without being so deep into the system, I can kind of create that for my own community. How do they like shopping? How can I show up on social media and really authentically showcase the brand and make people feel like they're a part of it? And I think just building it in a very not untraditional, but something that feels fresh, and how people are actually wanting to be a part of a brand now.
If there's a through line across this new guard, it's a shift away from the old New York fantasy. One great show, one established buyer, one big break, towards something more sustainable. Designers building legible codes, repeatable signatures, and a relationship with customers that doesn't depend on the oxygen of Fashion Week alone.
I think it's also very important to challenge or evolve the conversation. I don't think it's exactly necessary in today's age to contribute for the sake of contribution. We have so many clothes out here. We obviously have so many different things going on in our world that noise is just noise at this point. I always like to make sure my contribution is meaningful, is intentional, and, add something positive to the world.
But will it be enough to subsist in such a challenging market? The designers to watch are the ones who can translate this discipline into growth, aligning product, storytelling, and distribution without losing the point of view that made them visible in the first place.
Thank you, Lily. As always, that was Monocle Fashion's producer, Lily Austin, and joining us down the line before that, Monocle's fashion director, Natalie Teodosi. You're listening to Monocle on Fashion. And finally, on today's show, the Winter Olympics are in full swing, and the Monocle team has had a ringside seat with our special daily program, Monocle in Milan, broadcasting live from the Allianz Winter Sky Lounge. While sport, of course, takes center stage, the Games are also, as ever, a showcase for each nation's top designers. The previously mentioned Ralph Lauren, for example, returned to design the US kit. And Stella Novarino, the founder of Stella Jean, was behind the uniform for Haiti's first ever Winter Olympics team. Another prime example is Uniqlo. The brand, perhaps best known for its heat tech, is the main sponsor of Sweden's Olympic and Paralympic Committee and has designed the team's uniform. Monocle Radio's Tom Webb spoke to Uniqlo Scandinavia's Chief Operating Officer, Nikolina Johnston, to hear more about the partnership.
It's one of our proudest moments, actually, because we are the main sponsor of the Swedish Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So I am here to see the fruit of all the hard work that we've been doing, and especially all the fantastic results from all the athletes and their performance.
And how far does that relationship go back?
So we started off back in 2019, and this was right after we opened our first store in Stockholm, in Sweden. And we very quickly, find common values in quality, innovation, and sustainability. And then we said, okay, this is a good match, and this is a good partnership for us to explore.
And how has that relationship evolved? You've mentioned sustainability. What lessons have you learned to get to where we are now?
So one of the beauties of our life-work philosophy, so Uniqlo's life-work philosophy, is that we believe in constant evolution. And that is something that also applies to this partnership, is that we start off doing something and then we continuously try to perfect it. So rather than scrapping completely a collection, we try to build on that collection and make it even better. And that goes for all the three key values that I mentioned: quality, innovation, and sustainability. So we've had some key progress per each single collection that we've developed in those three pillars that I would be happy to elaborate on.
Please do, because everyone associates with Uniqlo with evolving and technology, heat tech, for example. How have you applied that with working with an Olympic team?
Yeah, so in the same way that customer is at center of everything that we do, including our product design process, athlete will be at center of everything that we do in this partnership, right? So this is really a great opportunity for us, first and foremost, to understand their needs, to better adapt the clothes so that they can perform the best. But also it gives us an opportunity, obviously, to get insight from top athletes about our products, which also helps and enables us to create our core products to our customers all over the world. And you mentioned heat tech, but we've also, through this partnership, actually developed new innovation that have now become available to all customers globally. And some of those innovations is the hybrid down parka. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically a new way to construct a down jacket that includes ventilation panels. And so you keep warm, but you also keep it quite breathable.
So along with the parka, what other interesting innovations have you come across to meet those needs from athletes?
Yeah, so one of the developments for the Milano Cortina official collection is actually the use of a completely new material. And that material is called Dermisax. It was actually developed by our long-standing partner, Toray Industries. And so this is a material that has the highest level of waterproofness, combined with breathability, taped seams, ventilation holes, etc. So it's a highly functional product, but it looks very sleek and elegant in its look. So it's actually being used by the athletes in the opening ceremony, and we've also introduced it to our customers in our store. And this is kind of a first time ever.
So how is what you're doing here with the Swedish team part of the global Uniqlo output?
So this is also one of the ambitions with this partnership, is that we have a lot of respect for the Swedish values, such as simplicity or sustainability or durability and high quality products. And this partnership allows us to learn a lot about those different values and how we can actually translate them into the products. So as I mentioned before, one of the fruits of this project is that we can bring even better products to our end consumers or consumers in the store that actually can also take benefit from these new innovations and technologies that we've developed.
And how does the partnership with Sweden and Scandinavia go deeper in terms of inspiring the next generation, giving back?
Yeah, so one common ambition that we have in this partnership as well is to give back to society and to make sports even more available for the youth out there. And this is a common shared mission that we have with the Swedish Olympic Committee. And one example of that is that we've enabled like events where people can meet their idols. Like last summer Olympics, Truls Møregård, the ping pong player, did a fantastic performance, and so he was invited to our King's Garden store in Stockholm, where over 600 kids could actually play with him and meet the idol and make ping pong available for more youth and make it fun. Yeah.
And you're always evolving, as we've discussed. Looking ahead to the partnership going forward, where would you like to see it? What innovations, what areas would you like to develop or expand on?
So I think the core of the partnership will remain the same, meaning the three core values that we share is what we're always going to work towards improving. So I'm hoping to see some significant progress in all these three elements. So how can we develop more highly qualitative products and make them even more innovative, and then in the end also contribute to the sustainability agenda, which is, again, this partnership is, yes, to help the athletes really perform, and this is definitely our number one priority, but secondly, how can we help to contribute to grow our global company through this partnership and those three pillars.
Now, if you could take us on a little shopping tour. We are in the Sweden Arena, which is the home, it's the fan hub for the fans that want to watch the games and the Swedish team. You do have clothing on sale here. You do have things that the public can buy. Can you walk us through some of them?
Yeah, so, I mean, clothes have so many different purposes, right? But it's very evident in this type of context that you want to be able to identify yourself as part of the Sweden team. So we're offering in the Sweden Arena here some of the fan-based items, basically, that can be worn by anybody. And that's a beanie with the big letters marking Sweden. We're also offering a fleece jacket or a short-sleeved, highly functional t-shirt that can be bought here in the arena directly. So if they want to show up even more as supporters, we give them that option with these fan-based items.
I can say we are indoors and you are wearing the beanie, and it's completely natural. What's the most popular item that you're finding, both with the athletes and with the consumers?
Yeah, so we've had a very positive response, and I think that the beanie is definitely an iconic product right now with all the athletes that are gaining their medals, and it's very much a piece appreciated. But in the same time, we have the pieces like this knitted fleece that I'm actually wearing myself, which is basically, it has the looks of a knit, but on the inside it's a fleece. So it's a quite elegant piece with high function, and that is actually one of our most appreciated products here in the shop.
That was Nikolina Johnston, Chief Operating Officer for Uniqlo Scandinavia, speaking to Tom Webb, Monocle's Deputy Head of Radio. For more from the Olympics, tune in to Monocle in Milan, airing all this week at 10 a.m. Central European Time. And that's it for today's program. Join us next week for more Fashion Week dispatches and in-depth interviews. This episode was produced and edited by Lily Austin. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Thank you for listening.